I vividly remember the day I enlisted in the Army, fresh out of college, eager to serve my country. The military's structure felt like the perfect fit, and over the years, I found purpose in my duties. But with each deployment, pieces of my personal life were left behind. After nearly 30 years, I retired. Marcy and I had faced many challenges together, raising our kids amidst the chaos. Despite thinking our bond was strong, adjusting to civilian life proved harder than I expected, and we started drifting apart. The warning signs were subtle, and I missed them, comfortable in our routine. Trust, I realized, is fragile. We lived in a cul-de-sac with modest homes. At our first block party, Marcy and I, empty nesters now, met our neighbors. Our son, Kyle, was in college, and our daughter, Rhonda, had joined the Navy, which didn't thrill me as a retired Army colonel. At the party, Marcy got stuck talking to Chuck from across the street and wasn't happy about it. She signaled for me to save her, but I was busy chatting with Jenny, a fit single mom. When Marcy gave me a more urgent look, I brought Jenny over to Chuck, freeing Marcy. But she wasn't impressed with how long it took me. As we left, we exchanged nods with the Nielsens, a young couple who seemed to share an odd, almost conspiratorial look. My years in intelligence made me suspicious, but I followed Marcy hoping for some pre-trip closeness. Years of military life strained our marriage. We had nearly divorced during my Korea posting, but somehow got back on track. Yet deep down, I knew something had happened during that rough patch. Infidelity is common in military marriages, though no one likes to admit it. Marcy and I were fortunate to still be together, though I suspected she had cheated while I was away. How did I know? A tip from my ex-girlfriend, who managed a hotel near Marcy's work about seeing her at the Red Roof Inn, raised questions. I even hired an investigator, but it turned out Marcy's hospital was under renovation, and she parked there out of necessity. Still, her early arrivals at work stopped when I returned home, leaving me uncertain. My time in Korea took a toll on our family. A year apart created a gap I couldn't close, and the strain made me realize our marriage wasn't unbreakable. Though I never discovered who the other man might have been, Marcy seemed committed to fixing things, as was I. I eventually sacrificed my love for flying, transitioning to Army intelligence to reduce the risks. Despite multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan after 9/11s, this new role gave Marcy some peace of mind. But I still worried about our marriage and decided to retire rather than pursue a general's star, knowing another deployment could end us. In retirement, my consulting job paid better than staying in the Army, and I was there for my kids' graduations with Marcy by my side, which was priceless. Marcy continued her nursing education and became the top nurse on a brain surgery team. She worked closely with Dr. Trey Cardosa, a talented, confident surgeon. I noticed how he looked at Marcy, and her praise for him made me uneasy. When I expressed my concerns, Marcy admitted that flirting at work helped relieve stress, but insisted it went no further. She reminded me of my close working relationship with a CIA colleague, Deirdre, before deploying to Iraq. Though Deirdre had shown interest in me, I had to trust Marcy just as she had trusted me with Deirdre. The conversation didn't go well and lingered in the background of our lives. The truth was, Marcy had a reason to be suspicious. Deirdre made a move on me after an ambush in Iraq, and in a moment of weakness, I almost gave in. We were interrupted before anything happened, and I convinced myself it evened the score for whatever Marcy might have done in Korea. But deep down, I knew I was only fooling myself. Now, Marcy and her team were heading to South America for 6 weeks with Doctors Without Borders. I wasn't thrilled about her being with Dr. Trey, but I didn't want to disrupt her career after all the support she had given me during mine. "I've stayed home for you many times," she said. "Now it's your turn to wait for me." What could I say to that? Things were tense when she left for the airport. She spent the night packing and talking to her mom, leaving us with little time together. I didn't want to argue, so I let it go. The next morning, she was gone. No goodbye, no note. I checked for messages, but found none. I was both annoyed and worried. After calming down with coffee, I tracked her flight to Colombia and hoped she would call or text upon landing, but she didn't. I sent her a brief message. "I hope you're okay. Nice way to leave, Marcy. Speaks volumes." No reply. Not that day or the next. Running usually helped clear my head, but frustration pushed me to run faster. Nearing our cul-de-sac, I was out of breath when Vincent Nielsen called out to me. He lived behind us, and his wife Leslie was in the garden. "Nice view, huh?" he joked, noticing where I was looking. I brushed it off, saying I needed a shower. He invited me over, even without Marcy, suggesting steaks and drinks. His wife smiled, and her subtle movements added to the strange vibe. I took the long way home, still preoccupied with Marcy's silence. After a shower, I sat in our empty house, waiting for a call that never came. It was dark when I finally decided to call her hotel. I knew her itinerary and room number, but there was no answer. The hotel manager, Pablo Espinosa, confirmed she had checked in but seemed guarded. He promised to check on her and have her call me, but something felt off. I then searched my contacts for Marcy's close colleague, Penny Washington, hoping she might know more. Just then, my phone rang. It was Pablo from Bogota, not Marcy. "Hello, Pablo," I answered. "Any news about my wife?" "Señores, she wasn't in her room. Maybe with some other ladies or out," he said, becoming uncooperative. "Can you do me a favor, Pablo?" "Yes, señores," he replied, less polite than before. "What's Dr. Trey Cardosa's room number?" 514, señores. Do you want me to call him?" I cringed. Marcy's room was 515. "Not yet, Pablo. One more thing." "Sí, señores, but I'm busy." "Please call Mrs. Penny Washington's room." After a pause, he agreed, and I waited on hold. Finally, Penny answered. She knew it was me, probably tipped off by Pablo. "Hi, Penny," I said. "Sorry to bother you. Where is my wife?" She grew irritated. "Why do you ask?" "Don't play games, Penny. Marcy's room is next to Trey's, and she's not in it. You know why." "Rick, you should talk to your wife," she replied, but I overheard a man asking, "Who is that?" "Maybe I should talk to your husband about the man in your room, Penny. I have his number." She quickly responded, pleading, "Please don't call my husband. This is the first time. I don't care how many times you've cheated, Penny. Tell me where my wife is, or I'll call him right now." Reluctantly, Penny transferred me to Trey's room. The phone rang and Trey answered, thinking it was Penny. "Sorry to interrupt, Trey," I said coldly, "but this is Rick Weston. I need to talk to my wife." He hesitated, then played dumb. "Why are you asking me?" "Trey, if you value your hands, put Marcy on the phone, now." After some noise, I heard Marcy's voice. "Give me the phone, Trey," she said. "Rick, I didn't expect this conversation tonight." "What are you doing in his room, Marcy? Why didn't you respond to my texts?" "What do you think, Rick?" she snapped. "I was having a good evening after a stressful day until you called. Just tell me the truth. Are you and Trey having an affair?" She paused, then asked Trey to leave. After a moment of silence, she finally spoke. "Rick, I've been a good wife and mother. I'll be home in 6 weeks and we can talk then. But right now, just let me have this. Just once." "If I don't mind," I replied, stunned. "You didn't even have the decency to talk to me before you left. Rick, all that would have done is start a fight." "You think?" I said sarcastically. "Maybe I would have asked you to stay." "I might have stayed," she admitted, "but I needed this, just once, to feel alive." "And Trey?" "He's just a distraction, Rick. I don't love him." "How convenient," I said, then heard a knock at the door. "Marcy, I have to go," I told her. "I love you, Rick." "I love you too, Marcy, but I'm not sure I'm still in love with you." I hung up. When I opened the door, Leslie was standing there alone. "Evening, Rick," she said with a smile. "Hello, Leslie," I replied, noticing how stunning she looked. "Are you going to let me in?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Sure," I said, stepping aside. She handed me a bottle of wine. Red Moscato, my favorite, something Marcy must have told her. "I was hoping you needed some company," Leslie said. "Not sure how good I'll be, but I do have some questions." "Ask away," she replied, searching for wine glasses. As I poured, I asked, "Where's Vincent?" "He's out playing cards with friends." "I see," I said, thinking about how often I left Marcy alone during my military career. "Marcy's in South America, right?" Leslie asked. "Have you heard from her?" "Funny you ask. I was just talking to her when you knocked." "Oh, I'm sorry, Rick. Did I interrupt?" "No, we said what needed to be said," I replied, sensing she could tell I was in a bad mood. "Leslie, I think we need to talk." We locked eyes, both of us questioning. Leslie pursed her lips and then nodded. "Let's sit," I suggested, pointing to the living room. She sat at a slight distance from me, crossing her legs. "How much has Marcy told you?" she asked, flipping the question back to me. "I had hoped Marcy talked to you before she left." "Did she?" I asked. "No, I ended up playing phone tag with her, only to find out she's in South America with her doctor boyfriend. Then she told me to talk to you. So let's stop the games. What did you and Marcy plan before she left?" Leslie took a long sip of wine, needing some courage. "Marcy and I ran into each other at the mall some time ago, and we ended up having drinks at my place. I don't know where you and Vincent were, but we talked, and I opened up about my marriage and my husband's interests." She paused, deciding how much to reveal, so I waited in silence. "My husband likes to share me," she finally admitted. Share you? I asked, piecing it together. With other men? Yes, she confirmed. I told Marcy because I wanted her to know, so she might let me pursue you. How did Marcy take that? I asked. At first, she was shocked. She listened quietly as I explained. Later, she agreed on the condition that it happens while she's out of the country. I scoffed, amazed at the situation. So, Marcy never discussed this with me? No. She dropped that bombshell on me tonight just as you were on your way over, Leslie said, clearly surprised by the timing. I found out about her and Dr. Trey tonight, I admitted. Leslie shook her head. My husband and I have an open marriage, but we never go behind each other's backs. So Vincent knows you're here? I asked, seeking clarity. Yes, she confirmed. He knows I'm attracted to you and has no issue with it. You've had other steady partners? I inquired. Just one, off and on for 2 years, she explained. Mostly we meet men out of town for adventures. And Vincent watches? I asked, surprised. Yes, it's safer that way, she said casually. I shook my head in disbelief. How long have you two been doing this? 4 years, she replied, as if it were perfectly normal. And Marcy agreed to this arrangement? I asked, trying to piece it all together. Yes, but only while she's away, she clarified. Did she mention anything about what she'd be doing while she's gone? I pressed further. No, she admitted, but I had a feeling she might be doing something similar. Maybe giving me permission to be with you eased her conscience. I wish she had talked to me, I said, feeling the weight of my own mistakes. Leslie handed me a letter. Marcy left this for you before we do anything, she said, heading to the restroom. The envelope simply read, Rick. I took a deep breath and opened it.
Dear Rick, by now you know I'm breaking our vows with Trey. But before you judge me, remember Deirdre in the Middle East. I have no proof, but I'm almost certain you slept with her. I studied interrogation techniques when helping you with your Army intelligence classes, and I noticed how you looked away whenever I mentioned her. You're a terrible liar, Rick. When Trey first touched me, I didn't tell you. Maybe I should have. Just like I should have had affairs during those lonely years when you were off playing soldier. I was tempted, especially when you were in Korea, but I stayed true to you. Then Deirdre visited me while you were in the Middle East, and her smugness confirmed my suspicions. I'm almost sure you were unfaithful. If I'm wrong, then I'm the first to cheat, but I doubt it. So, here's the deal. While I'm gone, I'm not your wife, and you're not my husband. We both have a 6-week hall pass. If we still love each other when I return, we can move forward. If not, we'll mourn what we had. I'm choosing this, Rick, of my own free will. I don't love Trey, but I find him attractive. He'll be nothing but a memory if you still want me. If you love someone, set them free. I'll be back in 6 weeks. Meet me at the Ambassador Hotel near the airport if you want to try again. If not, don't come to the airport. Just walk away. Love always, Marcy. P.S. Leslie was supposed to get tested for STDs before tonight. Make sure she shows you the results. Trey and I were tested before we left, and I'll get tested again before I return. If we're going to make this work, this will be our first step toward trust.
After reading the letter, I noticed Leslie at the kitchen island refilling her glass. Are you okay? She asked. I will be, I replied. She nodded and returned with the bottle, sitting closer this time. She refilled my glass and looked at me with those doe-like eyes. So, Rick, what do we do now? Right now, nothing, I said firmly. You and Marcy planned this for 2 weeks, and I'm just hearing about it tonight. It sounds like she's been up to something for a while. Am I right? I guess so, Leslie admitted, looking down. She wasn't used to someone resisting her charms. If I were single, it might be different, but I don't like being played, especially by someone I've loved for most of my life. You said this was her way of easing her guilt, I continued. It's clear this was planned behind my back. She even told you what wine to bring. I don't appreciate being used like that. I understand how you feel, she said quietly. So I guess nothing is going to happen between us. Not tonight, I replied. I need time to think before I make any decisions. So can we count on you joining us for dinner in a day or two? She asked. I don't know, Leslie. I need to sort things out. We'll see. Okay, she said softly. Just know I'm here for you. Thanks, Leslie, I said. Good night, and thanks for the wine. She took that as her cue to leave, and I couldn't help but admire her as she walked out. After she left, I reread Marcy's letter. It's amazing what you can notice when you take time to analyze it. Marcy's tone was venomous when she wrote about Deirdre, even though she wasn't sure we had slept together. Then, a few paragraphs later, she practically encouraged me to sleep with Leslie. The contrast didn't make sense to me. Yes, Deirdre and I got close in the Middle East, but we never had sex. It happened once, after surviving an ambush. It wasn't planned like Marcy's affair with Trey and this whole setup with Leslie. I felt guilty at the time, but I also suspected Marcy had cheated, so it seemed like a twisted form of justice. I also wondered why Marcy didn't want me to meet her at the airport. Was she afraid I'd get angry? I had never given her any reason to think I'd get violent, and why meet at the hotel instead of coming home? Then it hit me. Was she really that devious? Considering she plotted all this right under my nose, the answer seemed clear. But what was really going on? I scanned the room, suspicious of any surveillance devices. Could there be a camera in the smoke alarm? I decided to make some calls, but not inside, just in case I was being monitored. I grabbed Marcy's itinerary and stepped outside to the swing chair on the porch. Marcy knows I'm a consultant, but she doesn't know I'm actually the senior security consultant for Acme Global, responsible for the safety of our offices worldwide. I have contacts I can call on when needed. My first call was to Alan Williams, the top tech specialist in my department. He answered the phone with a straightforward, "Williams." "Alan, this is Rick. How's it going?" I asked. "Pretty good, boss," Alan replied, "but I doubt you called just to chat." "No, I didn't," I admitted. "I need your expertise." I then gave him a brief rundown of the situation and my concerns. "I'm sorry to hear that, Rick. I understand," Alan said sympathetically. "Give me 45 minutes to get my gear and I'll be over." "Thanks, Alan. I appreciate it," I said before hanging up. Next, I scrolled through my contacts and made another call. "Hola, Senor Rick," came the cheerful voice on the other end. "Ernesto? How are you, my friend?" I asked warmly. Ernesto Trujillo was my go-to guy in South America, based in Bogota, the same city where Marcy and her lover were staying. I trusted Ernesto completely. "Doing well here, boss," he said. "Didn't expect your call today. What can I do for you?" I gave him the same rundown I had given Alan. "Damn," he replied. "Sorry to hear that. You need eyes and ears on the ground, right?" "Yes, Ernesto," I said, providing him with the hotel details, room numbers, and the manager's name. "Can you handle it?" "Absolutely. You want audio, video, and pictures?" "Yes, the works. And send me daily updates. Let me know if you need any extra funds." "Got it. I'll get started and be in touch soon." "Thanks, Ernesto. I appreciate it. Send my best to your family." "Will do. Talk soon." After the call, I emailed him Marcy's itinerary. Shortly after, Alan arrived with his equipment. In 30 minutes, he found wireless cameras in several rooms, mostly hidden in smoke detectors, and a few microphones. Our landline had also been bugged. "These don't have much range," Alan noted. "There's probably a receiver nearby." We searched and found a box with a laptop in the attic. It was locked, but Alan figured it stored and uploaded data from the cameras and microphones. Alan discovered the gear belonged to Smith Investigations, with an address and phone number conveniently labeled. "What do you want me to do with this?" Alan asked. "Disable everything?" I considered it, but decided differently. "Disable the camera and mic in my office, but leave the rest. Let them watch. I'll make it boring." Alan chuckled and removed the devices from my office. He then checked the computer Marcy and I shared and found a keylogger and spyware installed, which he removed. "Why do you think she did all this?" I asked. "Probably setting you up for something, maybe a divorce," Alan suggested, confirming my suspicions. "You're probably right," I said. "One more suggestion," Alan added. "If the investigator installed all this, he might still have a key. You should change the locks and security codes." "Good idea. I'll call a locksmith right away. Thanks for everything, Alan." After he left, I called a locksmith to change the locks and codes, not wanting any uninvited guests. As I waited for the locksmith, I logged into Marcy's account on our shared computer, curious about her recent activities. Her email opened without needing a password. Her credentials were saved, and she hadn't updated them as I had suggested. For once, I was glad she didn't follow my advice. Normally, I respected her privacy, but this situation was different. I searched through her emails and found several exchanges with Trey, the doctor she was now involved with in Bogota. Rather than read them all at once, I exported and saved them to a thumb drive for later review. There were also emails with our kids, but nothing noteworthy. When the locksmith arrived, I showed him the doors that needed new locks and returned to the computer. One email thread between Marcy and Trey had the subject line, "lawyer," which caught my attention. In the thread, Marcy told Trey she had spoken with her lawyer, reviewed the proposed divorce settlement, and decided to move forward despite her lawyer's advice. Trey seemed surprised, questioning her decision since she had claimed to love me and intended to stay with me. Marcy's response was chilling. She planned to stay with me, but on her terms, noting that I had unknowingly been a cuck for years. She detailed her plan. She would give me divorce papers at the Ambassador Hotel when she returned and pressure me into signing a postnuptial agreement. If I refused, she would use evidence of my affair with Leslie to ruin me financially. She even mentioned the possibility of suing Leslie for alienation of affection, further tightening her grip on the situation. Trey expressed concern about the risk she was taking, but Marcy seemed confident that she had everything under control. She even admitted to having cheated on me for years, starting when I was stationed in Korea. After reading the thread, I printed it out for safekeeping. By then, the locksmith had finished, and I paid him, including a tip for the after-hours service. I shut down the computer and went out for a burger and a beer, picking up some cigars to calm my nerves. I noticed a dark SUV following me, likely the private investigator Marcy had hired. Despite trying to shake him, he stayed on my tail. When I pulled into Yancey's Bar and Grill, he did too. Frustrated, I got out, walked up to the SUV, and yanked the door open, startling the driver. "Who the hell are you, and why are you following me?" I demanded. The man stammered. I don't know what you're talking about." "Nonsense," I said. "You've been tailing me since I left my house. Are you the PI my wife hired?" "I don't know what you mean," he replied nervously. "You're lying," I told him. "I'm fed up with liars, so maybe I should teach you a lesson. What do you think?" "Please, don't strike me. I'll leave," he pleaded. "Don't ever let me see you near me again. Got it?" I warned. "I got it. I'm sorry," he muttered before driving off. After he left, I went inside, ordered a burger and beer, and sat at the bar. "Woman trouble?" the bartender asked, reading my mood. "Yeah, you could say that," I replied. "Can't live with 'em, can't shoot 'em," he joked, making me chuckle. I finished my meal, grabbed a beer from the fridge when I got home, and went outside for a cigar. As I smoked, a plan started forming in my mind. I searched Google, checked my calendar, and picked a date. I'd need to make a few calls to set everything in motion. Just then, I received a text from Ernesto. "All set. First update in the morning. Please send $250 for expenses." I quickly sent the money via PayPal and added, "Thanks. Talk tomorrow." I finished my beer and cigar, then went upstairs. Curious, I opened Marcy's nightstand drawer and found her rings. I took off my wedding ring and placed it beside hers, then looked up at the camera I knew was hidden in the smoke detector and flipped it off. The next morning, I checked Marcy's email and found a new message titled, "Been Made." The email detailed how I had discovered the surveillance equipment and the investigator tailing me. I marked the email as unread and logged out. After work, I reviewed the footage Ernesto sent of Marcy and Trey. It wasn't impressive, but I noted her remark to Trey. "He's probably with that girl next door. I'll have video of it tomorrow for my lawyer." I ended the video and called Ernesto. "Senor Rick, thanks for the money. Did you see the footage?" "I did, Ernesto. Listen, I have a plan I want to discuss with you." I laid out my idea, and he agreed it could be done within 10 days. "Why 10 days?" he asked. "That's our 25th wedding anniversary. I want to make sure she never forgets it." "You're one tough hombre, Senor Rick," he laughed. After ending the call, I scrolled through my contacts and found Deirdre's number, someone I hadn't spoken to since our time in the Middle East. I dialed, and to my surprise, she answered. "Rick Weston, it's been forever," she exclaimed. I briefly shared my situation, and she listened in shock. When I read her Marcy's letter, she responded angrily. "That lying witch. I never said anything like that. We were just a team watching each other's backs." "Thanks, Deirdre. I regret what happened between us, but none of it justifies what Marcy's doing now," I said. "Rick, you have nothing to apologize for. We were under extreme stress, and I don't regret it. So what's your next move?" she asked. I told Deirdre my plan and waited for her reaction. After a moment, she replied, "I like it. I really like it. I have someone in Colombia handling part of it, but I don't have access to everything I need for the rest." "I think I can help with that," she offered. "When do you want this done?" "In 10 days, on our 25th anniversary," I replied. "Oh, you're wicked," she laughed. "Consider it my anniversary gift to you." We both chuckled. Then she added, "You know, I've thought about you a lot since the war in the Middle East." "I've thought about you too," I admitted. "We made a great team." "I haven't connected with anyone like that since," she said, a hint of sadness in her voice. "I'm sorry to hear that," I responded. "That's life, I guess. she replied with a sigh. I've been thinking about retiring. They've got me pushing papers now. If you do retire, I know a place that would hire you, I suggested. Would I be working with a certain retired Army colonel? She asked, a playful tone returning to her voice. Definitely, I confirmed. Well, that's something to look forward to, she said. Then more seriously, she asked, Rick, do you think we could reconnect? Yes, I answered honestly. Marcy's made her choices. I'm not going back to her. Good, she said with relief, because I'd like to finish what we started in the Middle East. I'd like that too, I agreed, but I need to handle a few things first. I understand, she said. Just don't make me wait too long. I won't, I promised. This divorce will take some time, though. I get it, she replied. Just know I'm here if you need someone to talk to. It's great hearing your voice again, I told her sincerely. Yours too, she replied warmly. But my dinner's getting cold, so I'll talk to you soon. Promise? I teased. You'd better, she joked back. After we ended the call, I felt better than I had in a long time. Deirdre still cared, and that meant a lot. I was brought back to reality by knocking at the back door. It was Leslie with a plate of lasagna. I thought you might be hungry, she said. Mind if I come in? Sure, put it on the counter, I replied. She smiled and set the plate down. I hope you like it, or maybe you'd prefer something else. I was tempted, but decided against it. My conversation with Deirdre reminded me of what really mattered. As tempting as that sounds, I'll have to pass, I said. Her expression shifted to concern. What's wrong? Marcy gave you a hall pass. I do find you attractive, but Marcy's got a camera right there, I said, pointing toward the smoke detector. Why don't you wave hello? She looked up at the detector, shocked. Are you serious? Yes, I confirmed. She installed cameras all over the house and even hired a PI. Maybe he's watching you too. She shook her head, clearly unsettled. I had no idea. Come to my office, I suggested. Once there, I handed her a printout of the emails between Marcy and Trey. After reading them, she was stunned. Oh my God, I didn't know, Rick, I swear. I believe you, I assured her. She played us both. What are you going to do? She asked, concerned. I'm filing for divorce and won't be with anyone until it's finalized, I replied. Can we still be friends? She asked hopefully. Of course, I said, but nothing more. Okay, Rick, she sighed. I'm sorry about everything. Enjoy the lasagna. Thanks, Leslie, I responded. I escorted Leslie to the back door, watching as she left. She looked good in those shorts, but I wasn't about to risk everything. After she was gone, I changed into my running gear, figuring the lasagna would still be warm when I returned. After my run and a shower, I dug into the lasagna. It was loaded with cheese, mushrooms, and meat, just the way I like it. It hit the spot. I washed the plate, grabbed a beer, and headed to my office, pausing to flip off the camera in the front room. First, I checked Marcy's email. She had responded to the investigator, telling him to ease off for now. No other significant emails. Then I checked her finances. We had 3 accounts, one for each of us, and a shared household account. I noticed she had saved quite a bit, but also paid a hefty retainer to attorney Allison Hargraves, and a significant amount to Smith Investigations. A few Victoria's Secret charges also stood out. Nothing I'd ever seen her wear. Curious about Hargraves, I did a quick search and found she was a family law attorney and author who promoted female-led marriages. Her book had stirred some controversy, and she was known for pushing the hot wife and cuck lifestyle. I bought the cheapest Kindle version and took it to the patio with a beer and cigar. After skimming through the psychobabble, it was clear Hargraves had a strong disdain for men. I couldn't believe Marcy chose her as an attorney. It spoke volumes. My phone buzzed, and I saw a text from Ernesto. He could arrange what I needed, but it would cost $1,000. I decided to transfer the money from Marcy's account, ensuring any trace would lead back to her. I messaged Ernesto to confirm the transfer was done. The next few days flew by. My routine became checking Ernesto's updates, Marcy's email, going to work, running, eating, and unwinding with a beer, cigar, and TV before bed. I didn't care that Marcy never called or texted. I was enjoying the silence, as whatever love I had for her was gone. I saw Leslie only once after showing her the emails. When I returned the plate, Vince invited me to dinner, but I declined, saying I had things to do. He seemed disappointed, but I was relieved Leslie stayed away. I didn't need that distraction. The highlight of my days was talking to Deirdre. We chatted every couple of days, discussing life, dreams, pets, and even my kids. The more we talked, the closer I felt to her, and I realized I was falling for her. Eventually, I scheduled a meeting with Allison Hargraves. Her receptionist welcomed me with coffee, and I shook Allison's hand as I introduced myself. She seemed about my age, well-dressed, and in decent shape. Noticing the ring on her finger, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of life her husband led. "So, you're considering a divorce?" Allison Hargraves asked. "Yes, I am," I replied. "And your name is Weston?" she confirmed. "That's right." She frowned while checking her computer and then asked, "What's your wife's name?" "Marcy, short for Marcia." "Well, Mr. Weston, I can't represent you due to a conflict of interest. I'm already representing your wife." "I figured. I also know you only represent women. Seems a bit sexist to me." She stared at me. "If you knew that, why did you come to see me?" "As a retired Army intelligence officer, I like to understand my enemy." "Enemy? Is that how you see me?" "Pretty much. I read your book and your New York Times interview. You recruit your clients into your lifestyle, right? Is that what you did with my wife?" "That's privileged information," she replied. "Of course. Did you know Marcy was going to Columbia and what she planned to do?" "Again, that's privileged information," she said firmly. I nodded. "I noticed you're married. Your book's chapter on controlling husbands was interesting. Do you treat your husband the way you suggest, humiliating and controlling him?" "That's none of your concern, Mr. Weston. I think this meeting is over." I smiled and stood up. "I'd like to say it was a pleasure meeting you, Mrs. Hargraves, but that would be a lie. We'll likely meet again. Good day." As I left, I added, "By the way, I found your book disgusting. Have a good day." I walked out, noticing the receptionist smiling as I left, possibly overhearing our conversation. Finally, our 25th anniversary arrived. I took the day off, knowing it would be eventful. Early that morning, Deirdre texted me, confirming she had done what I asked. Later, I received a message from Ernesto. "Check your email." I opened the video he sent. It showed a dirt road with a makeshift checkpoint. 3 SUVs approached, and armed soldiers stopped them. They searched the vehicles and found something significant, leading to more soldiers arriving. Trey and Marcy were pulled from their SUV, handcuffed, and taken away. A tow truck hauled the SUV off, and the other vehicles were eventually waved through. Shocked, I immediately called Ernesto. "I saw the video, Ernesto. What happened?" "We planted the stuff as planned, just a small amount. But it turns out Trey was smuggling large quantities of white powder and flea powder. My men saw the pills being loaded and backed off to avoid cartel involvement." "Good call. Where are Marcy and Trey now?" "They're both in jail. It seems Marcy might have known about the pills, but it's unclear how much. They have 48 hours to present the case to a judge, and the investigation could take up to 90 days. But I doubt it'll take that long." "So the consulate knows?" "By now they should," Ernesto confirmed. "I'll keep you updated." "Thanks, Ernesto. It's not what I expected, but if Marcy's involved in trafficking, she deserves what she gets." After ending the call, I contacted Deirdre to fill her in. She wasn't too surprised and offered to reach out to her contacts in Colombia to gather more information. "I'll let you know as soon as I hear something," she assured me. While waiting to hear back from Deirdre, I gathered a trash bag and went through the house, removing all the cameras and microphones that Marcy's PI had installed. I also grabbed the receiver and laptop from the attic, tossed everything into the bag, and set it in the driveway. Then, I called Smith Investigations. "Smith Investigations," a woman answered. "I want to speak to the head honcho," I demanded. Okay, sir. One moment," she stammered, clearly taken aback. A few seconds later, I recognized the voice of the man I had confronted at Yancey's. "James Smith, how can I help you?" "This is Rick Weston. Remember me?" I asked, my tone firm. "Your client is now in a Colombian jail on pill trafficking charges. I've removed all your gear from my house. It's in a trash bag in my driveway. If it's still there tomorrow, it's going in the garbage." "Yes, sir," he replied quickly, his voice tense. I hung up, not interested in hearing anything more from him. The next morning, the bag was gone. I assumed Smith had picked it up, but I didn't really care. Soon after, Deirdre called. "I just spoke with the station chief in Bogota," she said, getting straight to the point. "What did you find out?" I asked. "Colombian authorities have been watching Trey since he arrived. He's connected to a major pill cartel. If Marcy's involved, she could be looking at a long prison sentence. The judge on the case is tough on foreigners," Deirdre explained. "How much time could she get?" I inquired. "At least 10 years, she replied. "Well, if she's guilty, she deserves it." "How much were they caught with?" I asked, feeling the weight of the situation. "About 20 pounds of white powder and flea powder," she informed me. "Damn," I muttered. "Expect a visit from the State Department soon," Deirdre warned. "Let me know how it goes." "I will. Thanks. I replied, ending the call. Afterward, I contacted the hotel in Bogota. When Pablo answered, I asked to be connected to Penny Washington's room. Penny answered nervously. Penny, it's Rick Weston. Do you know where Marcy is? It's our anniversary, and I wanted to reach her. Is she out with Trey? No, Rick, she's not, Penny replied, her voice shaking. Marcy and Trey were arrested at a checkpoint for pill trafficking. The soldiers took them away. We were questioned and told to stay at the hotel. It's like house arrest. Have you told Josh? I asked pointedly. No, she admitted quietly. Penny, I'm going to talk to him soon, I informed her. Please, Rick, don't tell him. It'll destroy him, she pleaded. Not as much as your cheating will, I replied sharply. He deserves to know. I ended the call and immediately contacted Josh, giving him the details and offering to send video evidence of Penny's affair. Thanks for telling me, Rick. This will be the last time she cheats on me, Josh said. I sent him the videos and then contacted a divorce lawyer, scheduling an appointment in 3 days. A couple of days later, my supervisor, Bill Hastings, called me into his office. A man from the State Department, Thomas Herman, was there. Rick, your wife Marcia has been arrested in Colombia for pill trafficking, Thomas said. We can monitor her situation, but can't interfere with local laws. She's also been placed on a no-fly list, so even if released, she can't return to the U.S. How much prison time is she facing? I asked. Up to 12 years, Thomas replied. After 7 or 8 years, she might be eligible for conditional release, but she won't be able to leave Colombia. He handed me a pamphlet on how to send her money for legal fees and other expenses, then offered to help arrange visitation. I told him I'd consider it and would be in touch. After Thomas left, Bill closed the door and said, Rick, this could affect your security clearance and job. Take some time off and get this under control. I will, Bill. Thanks. Back home, I searched Marcy's emails for anything suspicious. I found an exchange with Trey from 3 months before their trip. Trey asked if Marcy wanted to make extra money in Colombia. After some hesitation, she agreed to his plan. Good girl, Trey replied. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. I printed out the email chain, saved it as a PDF, and added it to a thumb drive with other incriminating emails. Next, I reviewed the videos, skipping the physical parts, and found a conversation the day before they were caught. I noted the timestamp. Are you ready? Tomorrow's the big day? Trey asked. I think so, Marcy replied nervously. Good. The product will be in our vehicle tomorrow morning, in boxes marked as medicine. We won't even have to touch it. And you're sure we won't get caught? Marcy asked. I've been on that road many times. No checkpoints. If this works, we can do it again and retire with the money. Sounds good to me, she said. Bingo. I saved the video to my thumb drive and gathered my thoughts. I then emailed the kids to arrange a Skype call for the next evening. After that, I called Ernesto to update him. Damn, what's your plan? He asked. I'm going through the rest of the evidence. I have a lawyer appointment tomorrow and plan to deliver the divorce papers myself. You're coming here? He asked. Yes, and I'll hand the evidence to the prosecutor too. You can stay with me and my family, Ernesto offered. Thanks, Ernesto. I look forward to Lupe's cooking. We laughed, and I promised to call when ready to fly down. Afterward, I arranged to send money to Marcy through Western Union, draining her account. Then I packed her belongings into trash bags, including our wedding album, and stuffed them into her car. I called her parents, informing them about the divorce and Marcy's situation. They were heartbroken, but agreed to pick up her things. They were shocked to learn about her pill charges. Are you sure Marcy's involved in pills? Her father asked. Yes, I have evidence, which I'll give to the prosecutor. They arrived later, took her car and belongings, and expressed their sadness over the situation. Please stay in touch, Rick, her mother said as she hugged me. I will, I promised. After they left, exhausted, I grabbed a beer and a cigar and sat on the porch. Deirdre called to check on me. Hey, how are you holding up? She asked. I've been better, but your call is lifting my spirits. We chatted, and I shared my idea with her. After a pause, she responded, That's the best idea I've heard in a long time. Let's do it. We ended the call on a positive note, and I felt much better. The next day, I met with my attorney, Lisa Hawkins, who was confident and professional, unlike Marcy's lawyer. I provided her with the evidence and explained Marcy's charges in Colombia. That should make things easier for us, Lisa said. What do you want out of this? Everything except her $401K, clothes, and car. I've already sent most of her money for her expenses. That's doable. How do you plan to serve her? I'll deliver the papers myself. Okay, I'll have them ready in 2 days. We discussed the possibility of going after Trey or her lawyer, but Lisa advised against it, noting that such cases rarely succeed. I agreed and left after paying a retainer. Later, I Skyped with the kids to break the news. "What's up, Dad?" Kyle asked. "I have some news. Your mother and I are getting divorced." Both kids were shocked. "Why, Dad?" Kyle asked. "Did you do something?" I gave them a brief explanation and revealed that their mother was in a Colombian jail for pill trafficking. "Are you sure she's involved?" Rhonda asked. "Yes, I have evidence that I'll give to the prosecutor." "You're helping put her in prison?" Kyle asked. "She broke the law, son. I can't ignore that. We've talked about the dangers of pills before." "I know," Kyle said quietly. "It's just so screwed up." "It is, son, but your mom made her choice, and she got caught." We talked a bit longer, and I answered all their questions. It was a difficult conversation, but by the end, they understood everything their mother had done and why I had to proceed as I did. I promised to send them the address where they could write to her, and we ended the call with a tearful goodbye. Afterward, I called Tom to arrange visitation for the day after I received the divorce papers. He agreed to set it up, and we ended the call. Then, I updated Ernesto on my plans. "Do you know who's prosecuting the case?" I asked. "Yes, Ricardo Montoya. He's tough." "Good. I'll bring him some evidence when I arrive." We ended the call, and my last one was to Deirdre. She listened quietly as I filled her in, and by the time we finished, I felt much better. 2 days later, Lisa informed me that the papers were filed and ready for Marcy's signature. With my bags packed and tickets ready, I grabbed my passport, picked up the papers, and headed to the airport. After letting Ernesto know I was en route, I received a message from Tom confirming the visitation setup. Ernesto met me after I cleared customs, and we gathered my luggage before heading out. "Where to first?" he asked. "To see Senor Montoya," I replied. At the government building, Ernesto parked, and I headed inside to Montoya's office. A receptionist stopped me, but before I could say much, a well-dressed man appeared. "I'm Senor Montoya," he introduced himself. "And you are?" "Rick Weston," I replied, shaking his hand. "I believe you're handling the case against my wife, Marcy." He invited me into his office and asked, "What information do you have for me?" I handed him a thumb drive. "This contains video of her and Trey discussing moving pills and email exchanges. I've also included her email credentials if you want to dig further." Montoya eyed me carefully. "You realize it's my job to put her in jail for a long time, right?" "Yes, I understand." "So why are you giving me this evidence? Shouldn't you be helping her defense?" When I didn't respond immediately, he continued, "Ah, she was having an affair with Dr. Cardoso, wasn't she?" "Yes," I admitted. "I see. You're seeking revenge?" "No," I replied. "I'm a retired Army intelligence officer. I can't ignore the law, even for my soon-to-be ex-wife. I'm also here to serve her divorce papers. Use the evidence as you see fit." Montoya nodded. "All right, Senor Weston, I'll review your evidence. How long will you be in Bogotá?" "Just a day or two, enough to serve the papers and return to the States." "Very well. Welcome to Bogotá," he said as we shook hands. When I returned to the car, Ernesto asked, "How did it go?" "You were right. Montoya is tough," I replied. He laughed. "You have no idea. Let's head to my place. Lupe's been cooking all day." At his home, Ernesto set me up in a spare bedroom, and I met his wife, Lupe, and their children. We enjoyed a delicious dinner, after which Ernesto and I relaxed with cigars and aguardiente, a fiery drink that lived up to its name. We talked casually before turning in for the night. The next morning, Ernesto drove me to the prison where Marcy was being held. The conditions were rough, noisy, crowded, and foul-smelling. Inside, we were led to a small room where Marcy waited, looking gaunt and exhausted, shackled to the table. I sat across from her, opened my briefcase, and set the divorce papers on the table. "You once gave me a choice, Marcy. Take you back or walk away. You know what I chose." Tears fell as she whispered, "I'm sorry, Rick. I never meant to hurt you." "Nonsense," I replied. "You plotted with Leslie, saw Allison Hargraves, and tried to set me up. You lied about everything. I came here for one reason. Sign these papers, and we're done." "But I don't want a divorce," she protested. "Too late. You plan to make me your slave or ruin me. Face it, we're finished. Sign the papers." Reluctantly, Marcy picked up the pen and signed where indicated, with the embassy official witnessing our signatures. When it was done, I put the papers away. "By the way," I said, "I noticed you paid in full for the Ambassador Hotel." Since you won't need it, I'll take advantage of the reservation. Go ahead, she muttered. And just so you know, I plan to invite Deirdre. We'll finish what we started in the Middle East. Just once, if you don't mind. She glared at me with anger, but I shook my head. After everything you've done, don't even start, I said. As far as I'm concerned, we're no longer married. Enjoy your miserable life. I stood up and walked out, leaving her sobbing at the table. Outside, I saw Montoya by his car. He came over, shook the embassy man's hand, and looked at me. If you don't mind, I'd like to speak with Colonel Weston privately for a moment, he said. The embassy man nodded and left. Montoya put an arm around me and said, Walk with me, Colonel. Please, call me Rick. I'm no longer a colonel, I replied. He smiled. And you may call me Ricardo, once a military officer, always a military officer, right? He said. Ernesto thinks highly of you. He's told me a lot of good things. You know Ernesto? I asked. Yes, we served in the army together. When he joined Acme Global, I became a prosecutor. I reviewed your evidence. It's strong. It'll save my government time and resources, which is why I decided not to charge you with criminal conspiracy, he said. I was shocked. Don't be surprised, he continued. Ernesto told me your plan. If your wife had been caught with a small amount, she might have been fined and deported. But thanks to Ernesto, nothing illegal was purchased, and the money you sent went to a charity for widows and orphans. They appreciate your donation. I couldn't help but smile. Your cooperation and record convinced me not to press charges. But if you ever try something like this again, I won't hesitate to take action, he warned. I understand, Ricardo. Thank you. No, thank you. The information you provided will be helpful. Justice is coming for your wife and Dr. Cardosa. I'm heading back to the States now, I said. If you return to Bogota, maybe we can have dinner, he offered. I'd like that, Ricardo. We shook hands. Vaya con Dios, Rick, he said. Vaya con Dios, Ricardo, and thank you. I returned to Ernesto's car. Everything okay? He asked. Yes, Ernesto, all good, but I need to get to the airport. On the way, Ernesto apologized for not following my orders. Don't apologize, I said. You did the right thing. I'm the one who should apologize for putting you in that position. Don't quit, boss. I understand how you felt. If it were me, I might have done worse. But it all worked out. Yes, it did. Thank you for everything, Ernesto. I'll be in touch. And give my best to Lupe and the kids. We shook hands. Take care, boss. Come back anytime for more bandeja paisa, he joked. Deirdre met me at the Ambassador Hotel on the day I was supposed to meet Marcy. We finished what we started in the Middle East, and it was a night to remember. Lying in bed, she said, I put in my retirement papers, thinking of a career change. Oh? I asked. What do you have in mind? Becoming a full-time wife and homemaker, she said with a smile. Do you think there's an opening? I looked at her and joked, I think there might be one soon. Want to apply? I already did, she laughed. And you know I've fallen in love with you, she said. I've fallen in love with you too, I replied. So, shall we make it official? She asked, even though my divorce wasn't final yet. Why not? Will you marry me? I asked. She kissed me deeply. Yes, Rick. I love you so much. Marcy and Trey were convicted of pill trafficking in Colombia and sentenced to 12 years in prison, plus hefty fines. Trey ended up in a terrible prison and didn't last long. Rival cartel members got to him. Marcy fared slightly better in a women's prison, but still had a hard life. She gets few visitors, mostly from the embassy. The kids send letters, but they're hesitant about reuniting. Penny and the others were released after the trial, but Penny faced a rough divorce and was fired from her job. I lost touch with Leslie and Vince, though I heard they continued their lifestyle. Leslie had to take a break after getting pregnant, paternity unknown. After Deirdre and I married, we sold the house and bought a new one. She's happily transitioned to being a homemaker, and though I've offered her a spot at Acme, she prefers to focus on building a happy home for us and her cat, which, of course, I don't mind at all.